Thank you for attending the propagation of native plants. My name is Amy Rembold, and I'm a Frederick County Master Gardener, and I'm so glad you're here. This is one of my favorite topics. I love growing my own plants. We all have our reasons for gardening. Here are some of my personal favorites, and these are pictures from my own yard, most of them. I love to create wildlife habitats. I'd love to see what shows up in my yard. I was so surprised when this little fox showed up and just sat on our bench for a long 10 minutes, just looking around. I love to have food for pollinators and to see what shows up, all the different types of bees. Maryland has over 400 native bees that are here in the state, and the pollinators. And I love to grow my own food. There's nothing like going out and having a tomato that has been warmed up from the warm sun in June or July. Chances are you never thought of your garden, indeed all of your property, as a wildlife preserve that presents the last chance we have for sustaining plants and animals that were once common throughout the U.S. This is a quote from Douglas Tallamy, who is an author and an entomologist from the University of Delaware. And he has written many books about converting your yard into native habitats by just replacing grass with native plants. We need to change our thoughts and why we garden the way we do and landscape the way we do, and understand that there's many things within our environment that needs these plants to prosper and grow. And so if we just take that opportunity to change that mindset and creating those areas for insects and wildlife and birds and ourselves, that it will help us all in the end. Reasons why to go with natives. Native plants have evolved in our region for thousands of years, or even longer, and they thrive here. Our native wildlife evolved and depend on these plants for food and breeding habitat. We can create habitat corridors for migrating birds and insects. Some birds and insects migrate thousands of miles and are reliant on native plants for food. And we need to actually have that along the way for them. You can have continuous blooms from early spring until late fall. If you plant it right and plant the plants according to when they bloom, you can have those blooms. They're not just centralized in the summertime. And these continuous blooms offer food for the early bees that emerge in the springtime until late fall, when bees are getting ready to winterize their colonies and also for their offspring. They require less fertilizer, water, and no pesticides are needed. If you spray for one thing, you're going to kill off all the things. So you need to realize that using pesticides is not just getting rid of one insect in your yard, it's getting rid of all of them. They are beautiful, and most importantly, you can save lots of money. We need to change our idea of beauty. We have been told that this is what a beautiful yard looks like. Lush green, no weeds, no insects. This is what our ideal of beauty, and this is what we've been told. So we need to incorporate color, shape, size, all of these things in which wildlife and insects and ourselves, what we need. So in the picture on the upper left-hand side is a leaf cutter bee that has cut out circles. She takes these circles and she folds them up and she lays an egg and she puts food in there, and this is for her offspring. This is what she needs. So this is a clear indication that you have a leaf cutter bee in your yard, and it's utilizing the leaves. This doesn't hurt the plant. The plant has evolved to adapt to the leaf cutter bee's cutting out of the leaf. So understanding that, if this bothers you, take 10 feet back, step 10 feet back. That's what Douglas Tallamy says. If you still see the problem, move 10 more feet back. This is a healthy yard. This is what you're striving for. We need to appreciate all insects, not just bees, not just butterflies. So, understand that the wasp, we need to have the wasp. They serve a purpose. We need to have flies. We need to have all insects. They all work together. And if you have a problem or a pest in your yard, if you don't spray and you allow them to naturally be taken care of by other insects, you'll learn to appreciate the insects, and there won't be a problem. The plant on the right-hand side is actually goldenrod. A lot of people look at that and say, oh my gosh, it's fall. I'm having allergies. It's because of this plant. It's not. The pollen of goldenrod is too big to cause an issue with your allergies. The problem is ragweed. So I have this all over my yard, and I have to tell you that I have more pollinators on my goldenrod late in the fall than any other blooming plant at the time. It's amazing the amount of bees and wasps and flies that are buzzing at that time. So if you have the opportunity, plant some goldenrod. You will not be amiss if by the covering of pollinators on that plant. So I just wanted to get down to some terminology that you'll hear or see on plant labels, and just to put this out there. Natives are a plant that originally occurs within a region as the result of natural processes rather than human intervention. A cultivar are plants that are bred for a particular quality or trait, such as color, foliage, size, shape, etc. And the plant names are usually shown in italics or tags. So when you see a plant tag in a nursery and it has a cultivar, you'll see, and it usually has some kind of name that's like jazzed up, to try to get you to buy it. Be aware that sometimes on those labels you'll see that this plant cannot be reproduced or propagated. So know that, and know that you should not propagate that plant. And then a nativar is a cultivar derived from native plants and bred for a particular trait, typically resulting in the loss of genetic diversity. So you'll see these also usually with those italics names on the tags. So let's get down to seed propagation. The great thing about collecting seeds is plants want to reproduce. It's what they do, and they can produce a lot of seeds. So just be aware of that, and know that you can end up with a lot of seedlings if you plant a lot of seeds. They are cheaper than plants, a bonus. Some natives and cultivars produce sterile seeds. So just because you collected them and you tried to grow them doesn't mean they necessarily will grow. Or you might not get a plant that is exactly like the mother plant. So just understand that. It's all in the genetics. Fall is the best time to disperse seeds. If you think of plants, that's when they're dispersing their seeds. So if you have the opportunity, that's probably a good time to start. But I'm also going to talk about things that we can do now in the wintertime. Most seeds in our area need a cold stratification period in order to grow. So that means they need a cold, moist habitat or environment in which the seeds will germinate at the right time. And they do need to have that in order to start to grow. So if you, there's many ways to do this. Sometimes you can use your refrigerator and put them in for a certain amount of time. But you can also, there's other opportunities and other ways to do this. I want to talk about the seed germination codes. I can't tell you exactly where to find this, but if you just type that in a Google search or a search online, you will come up with a listing of seed germination codes that let you know how long this seed needs to be in a cold, moist environment before it would germinate. This is if you want to plant seeds, usually starting indoors, but with winter sowing, it actually takes care of itself. So I'll show you the easy way to do this. This is always a fun thing, seed collecting. I say think like a plant. So, seeds are ready usually when they're brown. If you see a seed that is greenish, it's probably not ready yet, so I would give it some more time. You can still collect seeds now. There are lots of seeds that hang on to plants through the winter. So if you're out and about and you see some, go for it. Just make sure you're collecting them from places that you're supposed to collect them. You're not allowed to collect anything off of state parks or national parks. But if your neighbor has some flowers or plants that you're interested in, just ask them and say, do you mind if I take some of your seeds? And you can have your own. Do not collect when wet, after rain or early in the morning. You don't want to have mold or fungus growing on your seeds. So it's better not to collect at that time. I always say leave some seed heads for birds in the winter, and they need food too. So if you take some for yourself, leave some for the birds. Don't be too quick to clean up everything. And they can also help to disperse them too. If they might not disperse them necessarily in your yard, but they could maybe down the road to your neighbors. But that's how seeds get dispersed. Make sure to store them, keep them dry in a cool, dark place, and store securely. There's lots of things that would like to eat seeds, including mice and insects. So if you are storing them outside in a shed or in your garage, I tend to bring mine inside and leave them in the house so that I don't have those eating them through the winter. And don't forget to label. If you don't know what exactly the seed is, but you know what the plant is, kind of write a description on your seed packet. I'm a go-to person for using, I take pictures of seeds, I take pictures of plants, and then I do searches to try to figure out what they are if I'm not sure. But if I do know what they are, I label them and I also date them, because seeds through time can lose their ability to germinate. So the longer you have seeds, the less viable they will be through the years. There are many types of seeds. You not necessarily want to think about flowering plants, but there's a lot of other ways to get seeds. The plant on the lower left is actually an eastern prickly pear. It's the only native cactus that grows here in our region, and they have a beautiful little yellow flower that blooms in the summer, and it's short-lived, and then it will grow these seed heads that are the red areas, and the seeds are within it. Just remember when you're collecting it that they do have the cactus spines, so you probably want to wear gloves when working with them. And you can cut these open. They're fleshy, and you can take the seeds out and plant those. I have had success with that, so it's an interesting one to grow from seed. The middle is winterberry. That's the way it looks right now. It's a beautiful shrub that has these beautiful bright red berries that the birds will eat when they're hungry, probably later this winter. And I've taken seeds from that and grown them in a pot. And then Baptisia on the lower right-hand side. I love their seed pods. They're kind of like rattles. And I know when they're ready because when you can hear them rattling on the plant themselves, and then you can cut those off and save the seeds. So this is winter sowing. This is the process where I find is the easiest way to work with seeds and to get them to grow without too much interaction on yourself. So basically what you're doing is creating these mini greenhouses. It allows the seeds to cold stratify outside naturally, so they're getting the cold that they need, but also the moisture that they require to germinate. They will emerge in the spring when ready. I recommend that you wait for 2 sets of true leaves before thinning and separating. And once you start seeing the plants emerge, take the tops off to allow the wind to make this plant stronger. They need to do that or they'll all just start falling over. Make sure that they're moist. You need to water, water, water. Even in the wintertime, I will go out and check and see and make sure that there is moisture. If you can see the condensation on the tops, you want to have that because they need to have that moist environment. Remember to be patient. Patience is a virtue and it does take time. I know we get very excited in the springtime. I will go out and look many times a day just to see what's coming up. And so just know that it takes time. I've had things where I didn't plant them in 1 year and kept them around for the next year, and they do come back or they will grow the second year. So just understand that you need to have patience. There's also I just wanted to briefly talk about snow sowing. So a lot of times when we get very excited about all the seeds being out and we buy a lot of seeds and then we don't plant them all and we have tons of seeds lying around. Snow sowing is a great opportunity where after a snowstorm, you can go out and if you have an area that you would like to have seeds grow or native plants put there and it's clear, what you can do is just throw the seeds, disperse them on top of the snow. As the snow melts, the seeds will go down into the dirt and it's an opportunity just to move those seeds along. So if you have the opportunity, try it out and see what happens. So here I just wanted to talk briefly about how to create your little greenhouses. You need to use containers that are translucent, that are clear or kind of clear. You don't want to use colored soda bottles that could change the light that are coming into your plants. So what you can do is you can collect gallon milk containers, half gallon. You can do 2-liter soda bottles. And I've been told through listening to Facebook groups that a lot of people contact coffee houses or coffee places and ask them to save gallon containers, and you can get a whole bunch of them, and just make sure you go pick them up. The first thing you need to do when you get them is make sure they're cleaned out and take off the tops. No tops are needed. And you want to punch or put in I put in 4 holes at the bottom. I use a ice pick, but you can also use like an awl to do that. The next thing you want to do is you're going to cut, but not the whole top. You want to leave that hinge there, but you want to cut around and you want to have the bottom have at least 4 inches so that you can have 4 inches of dirt for the tap roots of your plants. And so you want to cut around and have that hinge. The next is you want to put in your dirt. I recommend using a pretty high quality dirt. You don't want to have a lot of other things growing in there. So just make sure that, I use potting soil and you want to water it thoroughly. You want to make sure that it's completely drenched before you put in any seeds. Picture number 4, I'm showing you penstemon. They're teeny little seeds that you have to basically crack or push the seed head to get them to disperse. The dime is a reference to show you how small they are. So the smaller the seeds, the less that needs to go under the dirt. A lot of these small seeds actually need to have sun to germinate. So you just want to sprinkle these seeds on the top. And like I said, watering it beforehand, if you sprinkle it on the top, it won't allow, the water won't drown them out and they won't end up all over the sides. Number 5, I'm showing you just, I push down before I disperse the seeds on to kind of fill in the gaps. I want to make sure that there's no um, openings along the side, because seeds, when entering water gets in there, they're going to go to the sides and you're going to end up with a lot of seeds down along the sides of the container. So I push down and then I sprinkle the seeds on top. If the seeds are larger, you want to, the depth of the seed plant should be about the depth or the size of the seed. So the bigger the seed, you want to push that down to that height. Number 6 is important because you want to make sure that, well, first I want to talk about putting the duct tape around it. I use duct tape. It lasts throughout the season. Once you put the duct tape on, you're not going to take that off until you see the plants emerge. So duct tape does last through the winter. When you go to check out throughout the season, the growing season, you want to just make sure that it's tight, that you don't want to have any openings or gaps, because things can get in there. You can have mice. You can get too much water. You just want to make sure that it's sealed. And then most importantly is to make sure you label it, and I put a date on it. You want to label it with a pen that's going to last throughout the growing season. I have used Sharpies in the past that they will rub off. I've had some success with pencils on certain labels that I put inside, but the pen that I'm using here is an oil-based label pen. So it's just a recommendation. If not, you'll end up with a whole bunch of containers and you have no idea what's growing in them. And even if you line them up and draw a map, things get moved and you will move them around depending on how they're growing. And so that doesn't always necessarily work either. Number 7, I'm showing that I put my gallon containers on leaves. I don't like to have them on a bare surface because they tend to dry out. So leaves kind of at the bottom create a moisture environment, so that the container will stay moist through the growing season. And once you have your plants growing, you can transplant them. Like I said, 2 true leaves, and then you kind of want to dig out that one little plant, and then you can put it in a new pot. You can stick it directly in the garden. Some people, when they, sometimes you have hundreds of seedlings growing in your little greenhouse. What you want to do, some people will actually cut it into 4s or 6 and take a hunk of the growing plants and plant those. So that's also a way to do it, to more quickly be able to transplant your plants. Like I said, on the lower right hand side, those are the eastern prickly pears that grew from seed. So they do grow. You can grow trees, so don't necessarily think of just flowering plants, but trees. So the second from the left in the bottom is an oak tree that grew from seed. And and the great thing about this is you can end up with a lot of plants. I planted butterfly milkweed last year, and I think I ended up with 60 plants that came out of 3-gallon milk containers, and I transplanted them and was able to use them in school gardens. So you can end up with a lot of extra. You can use them for plant swaps. You can give them away as gifts. You can plant them. You can donate them. There's just so many opportunities. So, don't spread the wealth. That's a great thing to do. Fall tidy up, spring cleanup. Fall is a great time to think about cleaning up your garden and yard, but it's also a time to think about maybe not cleaning up so much. If we think of nature doesn't go clean up and sweep up and put all their leaves in bags and cut down everything. So if we think more like nature, leave standing dried stems and seed heads for the birds. The dried stems also are nesting sites for bee larvae. So just remember that. Also, leaves. Leaves are a great mulch. It's a free mulch, and it's what the forest are covered in with their natural leaf compost. So instead of bagging up your leaves and shipping them off to the landfill, consider raking them and putting them under shrubs or around your plants. They provide nutrients, and by the springtime will create a wonderful compost mulch from the leaves. So just think about that. Also, leaves provide habitat for a lot of bees, butterflies, beetles, moths, and more, and also lightning bugs. So leave the leaves. I want to talk about cuttings. Cuttings is cloning. If we think about cloning, it's going to be the exact genetic makeup as the mother plant. So if we take a cutting of a plant and propagate that, we're going to have a clone. So a few that I've done in the past, I just wanted to say, is eastern prickly pear cactus, sedums, lavender, clematis with the vines, and also consider trees and shrubs. So what I do with cuttings is, in the case of the eastern prickly pear, is you just take off a chunk of the leaf, and I don't even use rooting hormone for that. I would just put it in a pot, and it over time will start sending out roots, and you'll have a new plant. Sedums, you can actually use those. You can just put those in the dirt with some root hormone by taking off the bottom, I would say the third of your whatever stalk or piece of plant you have, taking off the leaves. I dip that section into water, and then I will take some rooting hormone. I do not use it directly out of the container because you don't want to cross-contaminate, but if you sprinkle some maybe on a paper towel and kind of roll that section to get some of the rooting hormone onto the wet stem, then you can put that in the dirt and it'll grow. This works with lavender too. Sometimes in the springtime when I'm cutting back old growth on the lavender, I'll get new pieces and I'll just replant those. I've done this with clematis. A section of clematis you can take and take a cutting of that. It also works for trees and shrubs. My mom cut down some red twig dogwood, and it was in her garbage ready to go out. And it's probably been in the garbage can for a couple weeks, and I took those and took off the bottom section of the leaves and put the rooting hormone on it, and then I did end up growing some of the shrubs from that. So think outside the box. You can try anything and see if it works. And just remember the root hormone needs to not be contaminated. So you want to just sprinkle a little bit of that on a paper towel and you can use that. And that way you have it around for a while. Another form of cloning is dividing or division of plants. The best time to do this is early spring or late fall. And I always, it's the best time to look for plants that nurseries don't want to overwinter. They're usually root bound and they're usually pretty cheap at that time. So like this plant hospital, they need love and attention. You can bring them home and what you can do is actually take a knife and cut the plant up into sections, making sure that you have a pretty good root system to plant it, and then you can pot those up or just plant them directly in the ground, and you have maybe 2, 3, 4, or even more plants for the price of one. So it's a good way to do that. When we think about our yards and our native plantings, it's a good idea to maybe have signs to explain to your neighbors or your HOAs exactly what you are doing with your landscape and why. The Frederick County Master Gardeners have two programs in which we come and certify yards. One is the Baywise. It's a program in which you fill out an application and you check off what you're doing within your landscape and gardening practices that are environmentally sustainable and will help the water quality of our watershed, which ultimately goes to the Chesapeake Bay. So if you're interested in that, please look at the website. And what's wonderful is we look at your application and then we come out to visit your yard and have you tell us all about your wonderful landscaping and what you're doing. We love to do this and we learn as much as you do from us. So it's a good opportunity. Another certification is the Pollinator Friendly Garden certification. This is an application that shows that you are providing habitat for pollinators, including plants, water, shelter, and so forth. And that application also has somebody come to visit you and to see your wonderful garden. The price of the Pollinator Friendly Garden sign is $20. The Baywise sign is free. So please contact us about that to us, and we will love to come visit you. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant, by Robert Louis Stevenson. I really think that this is a wonderful way to end this presentation. It's really about the end game of trying to provide that habitat for our native plants and wildlife. And just by doing little bits at a time is a step in the right direction. So please, if you have the space, give a little bit to native plantings. And as we learned in this seminar, it's all about doing it so that it's not going to be expensive and it's easy to do, and you will be making a wonderful contribution to our environment. It's thrifty to grow your own. If you have any questions, please contact me. My email is located at the bottom of this. I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. I wanted to also let you know that beginning of next year, we have our new seminars that are going to be out throughout the year next year. So please sign up and come visit us during those times. The next 3 slides are going to be a propagation resource list that I've compiled of different information. I will slowly go through those. And I also wanted to let you know that the Frederick County Master Gardeners will be having their annual plant sale on April 27th, 2024. It's at the Frederick Fairgrounds, and we do have a lot of varieties of native plants and perennials for sale there. They do go quickly, so my best advice to you is to come early. And here is the propagation resource list. I will let that stay on for a brief moment and then go on to the next. Thank you for attending the seminar.